So for today, I want to talk about kind of something you and I have talked a lot about lately, which is
Okay.
the importance of looking for other groups or communities that already exist that you can pull from for your ideal audience.
Right.
And so I'm curious if you could just talk a little bit about your own experience of like where you've seen that work or not work.
Well, I've seen a lot of people do that with things like Facebook. So, for instance, going out, meeting people in other groups, and then inviting them to come to their group. I've seen that be very effective. But you also have that just in general social situation.
Yeah.
I met this person at the kids' ball game or whatever. We have this in common. Why don't we get together and do whatever it is?
No, I mean, yeah, absolutely. So my question for you would be kind of like, are there any key factors that you've experienced that kind of help make a group more productive for getting you leads or less productive for getting you leads?
More or less productive. A lot of it has to do with how many of your ideal customers are in that group. And then normally, it kind of depends on where you are at. A lot right now today, nobody likes to be being sold to, but they like to know they have an X available to them,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So it's more important for people to kind of know what you do a lot of times in group than necessarily pitching them. So it's more a matter of going and getting to know people in various groups and finding out, of course, during the course of things, talk about family and you talk about occupation a little bit. And of course, when you talk about occupation, everybody always wants to know what you do at some point. And so you can give them a real brief description of what you do, then, you can become kind of like the go-to person for that. Whereas I told one realtor, go find a group that you can really get excited about and really support and it would be just natural for you to be there. And then just happen to be the realtor in that group. And after she did that, she got a lot of business from that group because she just happened to be the realtor who was in that group and everybody knew her. And she just was able to just be free and not worry about selling, worry about talking about real estate or anything. Just getting to know people, just getting to be a help and a blessing to others around her.
So I do want to talk a little bit about finding your group. And I think a lot of this will go back to kind of our last video that we did, which was all about finding connection points.
Right,
So I kind of want to break down for DMC. So OEN's a group where you're part of.
right.
So how does OEN fit into the connection points and the groups and branding for DMC?
Well, I think OEN for us works out really well because it's something where we can give away marketing to their people and help their people become more aware of what's available for marketing or the steps they really need to go through because most people have no idea what marketing is, how to figure out who's going to buy their product, etc. And at the same time, because we're looking for a client that is going to be with us for a group series of months, um, it allows us to really talk about what we do without having to worry about cutting ourselves off from potential clients, so to speak. Because the people that would hire us for a period of time are the ones that are going to have bigger needs than what we can solve in a meeting or a presentation,
Sure.
that sort of thing.
Well, I'm referring more to like why OEN versus all the other groups out there.
Well, OEN, because they are startups, because they're very much a community based group. In other words, it's not a group you go to and you pitch to. It's not like a networking group or something like that, like a Chamber of Commerce morning meetup where you're looking to figure out who you can sell to in the room. It's not a networking group where everybody's pledging to give leads to everybody else. It's more of a community that's getting together of innovators, of people who want to start a business, who have some idea, and they're looking for people to give them help with, accomplishing, getting their business started and going.
So, okay. So you're struggling. So I'm gonna help you out.
Okay.
So, right, the goal of this is to be able to help other people understand A, how we decide what groups we want to be a part of, and B, for themselves, hopefully be able to figure out then what groups they want to be a part of and what groups they should be looking at to join to help them out with their journey. So the thing you want to break down is, right, I was hoping you would break down is that for us, we want to work with people who have an entrepreneurial mindset, who want to scale and grow beyond just having a job. And so what we're looking for is a group where that is encouraged. We're also looking for a group that comes and talks about the power and the benefits of entrepreneurship, which is what we are both very passionate about, is the power of entrepreneurship and the opportunities that it allows for us in America. Would you agree with those
No,
statements?
I agree. I totally agree with what you're saying.
So it's really about taking like your own interests and desires. I
Right.
know last week we talked about how you have a very strong connection and touch with the military community and like trying to be of support to the military community.
Right.
And so like one of the things we looked and talked about was seeing if we couldn't get involved in the military community a little bit more heavily, with different organizations that are out here for that.
Right.
And I actually found out that the SBDC has a veteran specific group that I'm hoping to learn more about.
Okay.
But so that would be like a group that we would look into because it matches what we care about, which is like veteran business owners, I think matches
Right.
very well with what we care about.
Right. And OEN matches with entrepreneurs who are looking to build something larger than themselves. They're not looking for just another business.
Yeah.
They're looking for something that is going to scale and be something they would either sell to someone else or build out to a major corporation.
But the big thing that I'm trying to get at is just like when you're looking for those groups, you want to look for groups that connect to who you are and how you operate and what you care about.
Correct. Correct. And some of them can be very direct and very business oriented, which is always great. And some sometimes are just very have
Yep.
nothing to do with it.
So another topic kind of along this line of groups and communities that I think is really important as well is events. I think you would agree with me. Events are a great opportunity to kind of get around other people that are like-minded
Yes.
if it's the right
Yes.
events.
If you have the right event, yes.
So I'm curious, have you ever experienced one of those kind of events?
I have from time to time. I've struggled with it myself because I've always felt like I had a bigger view of the world and what I wanted than most of the people in the rooms at various events I did, as far as Chamber of Commerce events, networking events, etc. Because I always wanted to be something bigger than just a job, and it's hard to find those people sometimes.
But you've never done any national events,
No,
correct?
no, I
Or
haven't.
any potentially international kind of events at all?
No,
'Cause I think that's one of the things that I wanna throw out there for everyone to think about. I think that's one of the things that you have missed out on to a degree to this
mhm,
point, is I think you've missed out on the benefits of all the people who do go to national and international events that won't go to the local event in their back door,
right,
right? They won't go to the event in Portland, but they'll go to the event up in Seattle,
right,
right? Or LA.
or Las Vegas, or
Yeah, exactly. I think events is a really great one in any industry, B2B or B2C, to really be able to gear, because an event usually happens around a specific psychographic, a specific reasoning,
right,
right?
right,
Whether it's an industry event, whether it's about, anime or sci-fi, there's always a specific theme to the event
correct,
that attracts people in.
right,
And I think when you look for those kind of events, especially again the ones on the national and international scale, you start to be able to put yourself around other people that are like-minded.
yes, yes, you can. But normally you have to travel, and there's
Oh, there's definitely a cost.
there's some definite expenses there.
Yeah. No, no, no. There's a definite cost and expense to it. But which do you think, and I'm curious your thoughts, right? And this is a little speculative, but which do you think would be more impactful in today's digital marketing space that we have? Spending $1,000 on Google AdWords or spending $1,000 to go to a national event that attracts people that are interested in whatever it is that you're offering, whether it's a dog show industry or it's a specific
Yeah,
industry of materials.
yeah, and that's a tough one because I can tell you that the AdWords one has this perception of being um, less scary, less of a risk.
Yeah.
Where when you're going to something like that, unless you have a track record or
Yeah.
you've got practice where you've shown that every time you go to a meeting, you find these key
Yep.
people that are actually end up being leads. It's kind of a crapshoot.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that it makes it kind of tough for business owners, because the question is this just me out there trying something new and I'm going to kiss away whatever the cost is, of
Yep.
cost of the meeting, which is probably $1,000 or more,
Uh,
and then you've got
it's gonna be.
travel and everything
I
else. So you're talking about a couple grand
It's
on the
usually
low end.
about 500 to 600 for the event.
Yeah.
A
Okay.
thousand on the
So
higher ends.
so
Higher end events are 1,000.
1,500 to $2,000
Yep.
you're looking at. And this
Depending on
is
how much you spend on travel,
yeah, and the
because food's
question
usually
is
included in the
is
higher
how
ends.
many leads would I have to get for what I do to be worth 1,500 to $2,000? And that becomes tough.
But I think my question to you would be more of, is it a matter of how many leads do I have to get, or is it a matter of how many people do I get in front of that are the right people? Because to your point, and this is the thing I just want everyone to think about and be aware of, we've played the Google AdWords route, and we've seen that it doesn't necessarily mean your ideal customers. Because for Google AdWords, you usually are going to have to advertise for a specific term or phrase that may not be specified for a specific psychograph.
Well, yeah, it may not be
Or
somebody who's
even,
in your ideal target market.
right.
I mean, occasionally they work out,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's the exception and not the
But
rule.
even if you're doing, Facebook ads or YouTube ads, like we've seen the same thing.
Yes.
You're not necessarily appealing to people directly that are same mindset, right? It's not like you can, and they did at one time, but from my understanding, they've ended it completely. But it's not like you can just advertise to people who watch Gary Vee, right? Or advertise to
Right.
people who just watch Richard Brunson or
Right.
something like that. Like you don't have that power anymore, and without that power, it's 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 a crapshoot as to whether the people you're advertising in
Right.
front of are the right people versus at the event. At least I know every single lead I get is a known, like, same mindset,
Right.
same goals,
Yeah.
same patterns of thinking as what I'm looking for.
Right. And
And they have money because they
yeah.
paid money to be at the event.
Yeah.
They've got to have some level of cash
Right. Right.
or credit.
And that's where it gets to be kind of tough. It gets to be tough because on one hand, yes, it's got all that going for it. I mean, this is a great lead, but at the same time, there's a certain amount of salesmanship and
Oh,
all
absolutely.
that you have to have and feel comfortable about that. Um, I'm going to go there and I'm going to find one person, or I'm going to find three people that are whatever,
Yeah.
and I'm going to keep working the room till I find those three people. And, again, when you're trying to not be salesy, it's kind of hard to pick
Yeah.
around and find folks sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Now,
absolutely.
some people are really good at it. I've met a few people that are just like they just tear up the room and give them an hour, 2 hours at the most, and they've gone across the entire room. They've identified the five people they're looking for, or all the people that have matched their psychographic, and they're totally good.
Yeah.
Um, but then there's other folks that still struggle at that. And you have to kind of know where you're at in that, or you've got to go find somebody else to be your salesperson, so to speak, to go and do that for you.
Okay.
You trust.
So what about online events?
Online events, I've had good success with, okay, but I personally don't like it because I still feel like many times it's just a crapshoot
Yeah.
as to what you run across,
Well,
what you
what
find.
I'm referring to more is like looking for people engaging in the online event
Hmm.
as a way to determine potential
Yeah.
people to interact
Well,
with.
I think if I had a pool of people that I was interacting with, or I was trying to reach out to, and that pool of people were on that meeting, yes, that would be valuable. But if I'm just going there blind
Yeah.
to look for people, that's really tough.
No, yeah.
Because even if when they break things up like they do your breakout room, even in breakout room, it's hard to really get to know people, have conversations with people.
No, I agree. I mean, I think the connection's a lot harder with online events, but I think with online events, I think if you're starting with a minimal list or no list, online events are kind of a nice cheap way to gain some insights into what people are thinking about and to start looking for patterns in a market research perspective.
Right.
As well as from a branding perspective, it gives you a chance to kind of talk about stuff on social media, talk about stuff to people you interact with, in person that you gained from the event.
Right. And that's a secondary benefit of that, is that it gives you a way to have content.
Yeah.
And that always becomes an interesting situation, because are you actually in active in some sort of online thing, Facebook,
Yeah.
LinkedIn, whatever? Are you doing that, or do you have followers as far as a email list that you're sending out to, that you can do a bunch of short little videos about what you visited
Yeah.
that people want to see? Or do you have a YouTube channel, right?
Yeah.
Where this going to an event, like I'm following a guy on AI, where his going to the event is important to me because it allows me to get the key things from the event without having to go there.
Yeah.
And those are all questions that people need to ask, but people never think to ask.
So real quick, I want to, because you're bringing it up, and I kind of want to know where your thoughts are, because it's the one thing that I think not enough people think about and put intentionality behind, and that is when it comes to content creation for social media purposes, right? I'll broaden it. If you think it needs to get narrowed, you can narrow it. But by social media purposes, I mean Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, etc.
Right.
For that content, do you associate that as marketing or do you associate that as branding?
Well, based on
Well, I should
the
say,
way we've
do you
defined
let me phrase it? Do you think of it as promotion or as branding? Let me phrase
the
it
way
because it's all
yeah,
marketing.
but the way we have broken it down, marketing, and our explanation of marketing, we would call it branding. And so, yes, you can get sales from branding, but you don't typically get direct sales from branding. In
Yeah,
other words, you spend a lot of dollars on branding marketing so that people know who you are. And inadvertently, some people buy from you.
well, and they feel connected to you
Yes,
is the other
they
thing.
feel connected to you, and they inadvertently buy. What you want to have also, though, is like what we talked about before, is a promotion that then finds once we find our psychographic and demographic, advertise that psychographic and demographic on the backside of a branding promotion. So
Sure,
they get to know you, they feel comfortable with you, they can trust you, and
and some
then you
kind of
can actually
offer.
have something else come through
Yeah.
that is actually an offer to those people.
No, 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 absolutely. I just was curious because kind of our main topics right now is geared around branding, right? And I think as you were talking about the content stuff, I was thinking in my head, I was going like, in reality, a lot of like what I think businesses should be doing to better build their brand, like going to events, like going, being a part of certain communities and groups, really is like should also almost automatically be content for social media
Right,
because that's how you spread your brand to people who already know you and potentially to new people who don't know you,
right, right.
if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, it does. And I think the concern I have is that people feel like advertising's advertising.
Yeah.
And I like the way that we've divided it up, because to me it makes a lot more sense. So if I'm doing branding advertising, I'm not expecting to get dollars.
Yeah. At least not
Okay.
immediately.
I mean, if I get a sale out of it, that's fantastic, but that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it so that everyone knows that my business exists.
Well, and to build trust,
Eh,
to build
Yeah,
connection.
right. All that back piece,
Yeah.
right? And then I'm doing other advertising
Yeah.
actually that I'm expecting now a return from. Where if I just did the other advertising, I mean, how many times have you gotten an ad for something or an email for something, some offer? I'll get you leads. That's my favorite one right now. I mean, because every day I get at least one, if not two or three. I can get you 10 leads. I can get you 20 leads. I can get you 100 leads
Yep.
a month. And it's like, yeah, that's nice, but I need a very specific demographic.
Yeah.
And when I look at that, there's not 100 of those out there. I mean, maybe there's 100 out there, but I'm not sure they're all ready and all interested in having a conversation today. You know, and what I want to do is, the concept of branding is that we're going to go out there, we're going to be known, we're going to be top of mind, kind of thing. But then you can follow that up with more of an offer of, hey, this month we're doing a special. This month we're doing whatever.
Right. Or we just added this new feature.
Right.
Come check it out.
Or there's this new package that we have put together
Yep.
for whatever this thing is. And then people, because they already know you and have a positive feeling towards you, now it becomes very easy.
Yeah. Well, it's basically making the transition of I like you to yeah, I'll buy from you. I mean, that's really where the
Right.
ad starts building.
Right. Rather than walking up to somebody, opening the coat and saying, which of the things that you see here would you like? Right. I mean, because that was a sales method, and that
It
existed
was.
for a long time.
Yeah.
But that's not the day and age we live in,
Right.
and I think that's the piece that I would like us to really help businesses understand is that the industry has changed. It's not just, hey, what do you need today? Can I get in 3 words with you to
Yeah.
see if you're the right person who wants to buy whatever it is? It's now I've almost got to build a relationship with you first, and then we can see if something I'm doing happens to be interesting to you.
I hate going off topic, but I kind of want to touch on this real quick because I think it correlates into branding still. How much do you think that change of acceptance of like door to door salespeople kind of thing is a change in the mindset of people versus a change in the competition available? As in back in the day when I think of door to door salesmen, especially in like the 70s and 60s, which is where like most shows that I've seen, show it very heavily.
Correct. Correct.
During that time period, there wasn't a ton of competition offering what they were offering. There
Well,
was like a vacuum you could buy from the whatever store,
there was no,
or you had the
there was
catalog.
competition, but everything was local.
Okay.
I mean, you didn't have the internet. There was no internet. There was no buying stuff online.
Yeah.
There was none of that. The closest thing you got to buying online was people who sent you
The
catalogs.
magazines. Yeah.
The catalog. You get a catalog, you get a Sears and Roebuck catalog, you decide what you want out of it, and you buy it.
Right.
Or you get somebody else's catalog of cool stuff, and when it's the appropriate time, you open up that catalog and you buy whatever you want to buy from it. That's the closest thing that you could get to what we have today with the internet. Now, the internet, I mean, I carry my phone around every day, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've got access to shop for whatever, or see what the prices are for whatever, or put together a sample, whatever,
Yeah.
for most anything, right? Online now. And that has transformed it. The other thing that made a huge difference is the 2008 recession.
Okay.
Is before that, everybody was hopeful and optimistic and happy faced, and money was easy. And if something didn't work out, it didn't work out. And we just went on. And in the 2008 recession, people realized, oh, I might not have a job. I might not have money to pay my bill. I might not. Do I really need this? And then there were all the scams for jobs and whatnot that happened during that time. And all of that has made folks really, really, really cynical. So really, if you look at before up to 2007, you had a very optimistic consumer.
Right.
And starting in 2009, you start having this very pessimistic, very critical consumer. And that is a change that nobody's picked up. Everybody's been doing marketing and advertising
Yeah.
like we still have the optimistic consumer that just trusts anything that comes along their way. And we don't have those people anymore.
So you think we just as a society have become more pessimistic
Yes.
overall in how we view
Yes.
things?
Yes.
Okay. And so you think so how does branding solve that from your perspective then?
Well, that's why branding originally was, what fonts do you want? What colors do you like? What pictures do you like? What appeals to you? Forget about the customer.
Yeah.
I mean, just do whatever, pleases you, the business owner. But now this branding is all about getting these connections because people only buy things they're connected to. So, for instance, during the pandemic, everybody was connected to Amazon because Amazon was there, Amazon was growing, Amazon was always adding new things, right?
Yep.
And because they were always adding new things, they were the place to shop. Then what has happened in the last 2 years? Well, Amazon has hit the place where, well, it's not profitable to add things just to add things. And now we have to make a profit at it. And which means that for some of our vendors, they're not making a profit.
Yeah.
So therefore, if you notice that what Amazon has offered in the last year has dwindled,
Yeah.
as well as people used to trust Amazon to be as good as the local store.
Yeah.
And if you need something that doesn't work, you can just return it and go on. And with Amazon, they've gotten stuff that isn't up to par,
Yeah.
that stuff that doesn't work, stuff that isn't good quality. And now all of a sudden, Amazon that was equal to my local store because I can get the same stuff there. Well, I need to be a little more cynical about that.
Yeah.
And that has really rippled out in so many ways. So it's not just that it's this company that's on Amazon, and so therefore I can trust because of Amazon, I can trust that company. It's now there's this company on Amazon. I wonder what their reputation is. I wonder what
Yeah.
they really do. I wonder what people think about their product. I wonder what
What is it
people
really like? Yeah.
and all that.
Well, and that's why the testimonies and stuff kind of are so important. And
Testimonies to the degree, but even those have gotten fake.
yeah.
So now it's forum is what's going on in the forum. What are the conversations? What are the problems people are having with certain types of cars and so on.
That is true. I have seen that
And
more often than not as people looking up what's wrong with it
yeah,
to try to figure out.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's those types of things that have occurred that have caused people to be very, very, very cynical. And the only way to get around cynicism is to build relationships, is to really know that person. So now my branding everybody can think of some brand that they have or some store that they've shopped at that when you walk in the store, it's just me. It's just so comfortable and it's just things are obviously where I know they need to be.
Is there a store in mind when you say that? Like, I don't know if I've ever experienced that personally.
Really, I've experienced it a few times. Not every time, but a few times for a
Okay.
few certain stores and at certain places in my life where I was looking for or interested in a certain thing. And I went into that store and it was like, everything I want is here. Everything I need is here. This is great.
I mean, I've experienced it before, but it's never been in the price budget where I was like, that made sense.
Right, right, right. And that's typically where it's been. But think about all the imagery, the colors that they chose, the images that you saw around, how the
The
store was
vibe, yeah.
actually laid out, the vibe of it. It was just so in tune with you. And it used to be that really didn't matter.
Right.
You just got to have the merchandise people are looking for, and that's all that matters.
Right.
And now this whole branding thing of everything from this in-store experience, if there's an in-store experience,
Right.
to all the other pieces, are all those things that are all interwoven now. And now branding is really important. Doing good branding, proper branding for, again, what your industry is, who your market really is, who your customer really is, what are they looking for, what do they identify with, what are those things, and
So,
and and really aligning yourself with those things.
real quick, I have a question for you because when you were talking, it made me think, and I'm curious what you think about this. Branding of the 20th century,
21st.
no, 20th century, was geared around identification and separation. Like, that's really what it was because the colors, the logos, the gimmicks, all of that, it was really geared around people just recognizing your brand and your business,
As
right?
being unique,
Yeah.
yes,
It was it
from
was it was
others.
recognition and association. That's kind of it.
Correct,
In the 21st century, branding is relationship and connection building.
correct.
Would you say that's a fair assessment
Yes,
of kind of the
yes. I think that's a good way to put what we're seeing. What we
because I think when you're talking, I'm going and I'm listening to you, I'm going like that's really what I see is what's changed is that it used to be branding was literally like branding a cow, right? It was about just identifying that this is yours, that this comes from your store. Nowadays, it's more than that. Nowadays, it's about building a connection, relationship with those people. And how do you build that relationship and connections?
Correct. And some people have always done it. I mean, take what's the high end department store that we own?
Nordstrom?
Nordstrom. You go to Nordstrom's, there's all kinds of people coming up to you willing to help you.
Well, it used to be.
Used to be. Yeah.
It's gone downhill the last few
Yeah.
years, but
But they're when in their heyday, their whole thing was you come in, we're here to help you. Everybody is going to fall over themselves
yeah,
to find you whatever it was that you think you might want to buy.
yeah,
And if you want something that's new and crazy and out there, we have that too. And that really that branded that store in a very powerful way to where even now, even though there's a lot of things that have kind of beset them, they're still living on what's left of that branding.
yeah,
Where other businesses that didn't have that branding, like Sears, even though they had things, they didn't tell anybody. And then the group that they were selling to kept getting older and older and dying off
yeah. Yeah, smaller and
to
smaller
where
market share.
their market just kept shrinking, shrinking,
Yeah,
shrinking. And because they never built that connection to that next generation, build that connection to that next person. What does that next person want?
yeah,
What's that next younger person? What does that teenager want when he becomes 18 and gets a job, you know what I mean, and
yeah,
is out spending? And they forgot about that and they disconnected themselves from that. And rather than bringing in, building, changing their branding to match these new groups,
yeah,
changing their marketing and advertising to match these new groups to keep bringing in new people, well, we've got something that worked, we're good,
yeah.
and now they're not good because they're not here.
Right. Um. So, I mean, I think that's a great point, and I mean, we've talked a lot about that of the companies that have come and gone. A lot of times, it's not remembering to change your branding with the new times, with the new generation, with the new markets that are there. But I'm kind of curious because one of the other things I think comes up quite a bit that I get from people is how do you brand if you have multiple target markets, right? Or
Right.
multiple
Yeah.
market segments you're going after, right? You
Right.
think of like Walmart, where there's
Mhm.
really like multiple segments that they're going after, or
Mhm.
even Fred Meyers is a great
Yeah.
example as well,
Yeah.
right? Fred Meyers almost has like a competing side with Target, and then they have a competing side with Walmart, and those are two very different customers that are coming to both of those. How would you suggest for a business to deal with that?
Right. And that's where it gets to be difficult because you've got to find something in the middle that all three groups, or however many groups there are,
Yeah,
can all agree on and all be touched by. So Fred Meyer right now has been pushing
yeah,
fresh vegetables and low prices.
yep,
And so on the low price side, they're trying to pull in some of that Walmart crowd.
right,
And on the fresh vegetables, they're trying to pull in those people who care about organic foods because they have a whole organic section, right?
yep.
And people who want quality produce that sits in the refrigerator for a number of days rather than going bad right away.
Well, I guess my thing is more of what if you've let me give a better example, okay?
Okay.
What if you've got a bowling alley
Okay.
and you've got a very diverse group around you?
Right.
And if you were to just appeal to, say, families, you would not be able to attract enough people to
Mhm.
keep your business open. And if you were just to appeal to, say, college age students, you wouldn't be able to keep your business open. It
Right.
wouldn't, like, you'd need both to really have a
Right.
truly
Right.
sustained business.
Right. Well, what I've seen people do in the past is they started something called cosmic bowling.
Okay.
So they have regular bowling with no music during the week for families, okay, or on Saturdays at certain times for families. And then they have cosmic bowling at night on certain days during the week for teenagers who want that rock music and that kind of vibe.
Sure.
And so one thing to do is to actually have two completely different stores in the same store.
Right.
two different businesses in the same business, or find something that all of them can agree on.
Yeah.
Those are your only two choices. You either got to find something everybody can agree on, which may mean that you have to lose some things that you've always had,
Yeah.
um, or maybe de-emphasize something and put a greater emphasis on something else. Um, and then, or you have to divide your store and have certain days we have these types of events, and they're very different events. And someone who goes to Cosmic Bowling would not show up on Family.
Would you suggest branding the store one way or the other, or would you suggest just letting your promotions and advertising brand it the different methods?
It would probably be the advertising that would brand it. And so what you'd actually be doing, as weird as it sounds, is actually advertising two or three different businesses,
Yeah.
depending on how you break it up. And so one business is advertised one way with one type of verbiage and all that completely rejects everybody else.
Yeah.
But they saw your name and they see your logo, at the top. Then you have other um, branding or other advertising that has a completely different vibe that that first group completely just doesn't connect with. It's like
Yeah.
whatever, try not to do something that's strongly negative to either group, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I just don't care about
Absolutely.
that. That's not me, kind of thing. And then that way you can bring people into each of those different types of things. I'm still waiting for the website where the website changes based on who you are, based on what you have, so that the colors change, the themes change, the way things are displayed change based on your age, based on what group they put you into.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for that. It's coming. It is actually coming.
I don't know for sure with all the anti-privacy laws, but maybe.
It they'll find a way. They will find a way. And that will be really interesting because that could be the next new cool thing in,
Personalization of.
yeah, total personalization of your shopping experience. So certain types of people, you want to shop this way, fantastic. We will redo the whole website so it works your way.
You know,
And AI gives you the
I
ability to
was
do
gonna
that.
say with AI and with login information, you might actually for login related websites where you have to
Yeah,
log in, that might actually
yeah,
be a
yeah,
viable.
yeah. Well, AI is the thing that would bring the labor costs down to where you could pull it off.
Well, just AI would make it so much simpler for modifying per the individual
Correct.
than I
Correct.
mean we've ever
Right.
had.
Right.
The just the
And the thing is
programs
that
are
you can just
amazing.
describe it once, and then it can go out and apply it across everything.
That would be kind of funny. Could you imagine? Like, I'm just thinking in my head, like, could you imagine you open up the Fred Meyer app and it's like green instead of
Yeah.
red? Like, you get to customize what color you want it to be
Yeah.
or something. Like, that'd be kind of funny.
Yeah.
That would
It
be cool though.
it would.
That would. Man,
It
I
would.
wonder why no one's done that now. Now that I'm thinking about
Because
could you
it
imagine if they had
because
like anime themed like
yes,
Fred
yes,
Meyers
yes,
or like
yes. But it's
the
still
gamification it would
right.
create
It's
would be
still
so powerful.
it's still a lot of work.
Okay.
AI isn't quite there to take care of all of it.
Okay.
But
You gotta admit
don't
that would be pretty
don't
cool.
look over your shoulder because at the speed things are moving with AI,
Yeah.
it could very well be possible in another month or two.
But the game, I'm just thinking the gamification that you would be able to create by being able to personalize like certain, like even
Mm.
Amazon, like if you could personalize it,
Yeah,
kind of like the like themes on like your phone. If
yeah,
you could personalize the Amazon app,
yeah. Well, you have
it
themes
would
on your browser,
it would
right?
be kind
And you
of,
have themes in
kind
your
of,
email as
yeah,
to how your email's
to a
displayed.
degree,
So
yeah.
it'd be just a carrying of that onto an entire website. But there's a little bit of engineering and
Some coding background that
well,
needs to be
yeah.
taken
I
care
mean,
of.
you've got to sit down and make sure that you've got all the right appropriate information. Even though this is what they really care about, you have to still give them a way to get to something else.
Sure,
If you're going to change the order of tabs of how things are displayed, that somebody who only wants the specs. I don't care about I don't care
yeah,
about the overview. And you got other people who I just want the
yeah,
the
yeah,
overview is the most important thing. Once I get through the overview, I'll figure out if I want to go someplace else.
sure.
You know, even simple things like that. Um, there's
That'd
a
be
lot of
cool.
design that has to go into that, a lot of
Yeah,
thinking on the back end. And then you've got to have some way to track people to see if what you thought was going to work for them is actually working for
What
them
they
or
yeah,
not. Because if it's not working for them, now you've got this fancy thing you did and it's working against you.
gotcha.
So again, AI to look at what the movements are to see whether this is really a good idea or not a good idea.
That'd be a cool feature to sell to like an Amazon or to like a few of these
Yeah,
different big
yeah,
organizations. I'm like Google even like that. There'd be some cool features that
yes,
I mean that would allow for that would be
yeah.
really. I mean that's a multi-billion-dollar business idea if you ask me. Like I mean
Well,
easily.
yeah. If you have the ability to provide it
I'm saying
it through all the
if
pieces.
you could program it and have the
Well,
systems.
programming it is not the hard part. The hard part is the is the mechanics
Well, I'm
of
saying
all of it.
programming is in the algorithm and because you're going to have to write an algorithm to figure out the level of importance and adjusting information per what they seem to care about, et cetera, et cetera.
But there's a step before that is that you have to do interviews with people. You have to do interviews with customers. You have to allow customers to make certain choices and then contact those customers and say, hey, on this page, would you like this or would you like that?
Gotcha.
And doing some interviews like
So you
that.
think it would be a little bit slower
So
paced?
so there's a lot of little things that nobody thinks of that would need to be dealt with. Okay, but if you did it, I'm telling you,
Be cool.
it would be the thing.
It would be really cool. Okay, so back on topic though, for branding. So we kind of talked about the importance of groups and events and the importance and value of creating content to build connection and using brand in the 21st century to build relationships and connections. I'm curious, kind of in your experience, what's the hardest thing that causes most people to have a brand that doesn't build connection? Like when you think of your own experiences with, companies and businesses, like what is it that stops a brand from being a connection building brand versus another one? Like,
I think the biggest problem is understanding that it exists.
okay,
Because if you look at most business owners, we start something out, we're trying to sell to everybody. We found somebody that would actually buy it, and we sell more to that person, and that person actually liked it, so they told other people, and now all of a sudden we're done with our marketing. Everything's good,
yeah,
and we never had to talk about branding. We never had to think about branding. We never talked about the target market
right.
because it was just, as we talk about, we're doing promotional market research, which is the most expensive market research you can do.
Unless it hits, and then it's great.
Yeah, for the few people who happen to hit, the few Hail Marys that do get caught. Um, but for most businesses, it doesn't. And then it becomes this thing that now you just added a year to the startup of your business. You just added, another year on to
Yeah,
that. And then you've got to go back.
yeah,
And if you don't go back to brand and you don't go back to this relationship building, um, and you don't go back to even before that, knowing who your customer is, real market
yeah.
research, figure out who is my real customer. Um, Now you're just shooting in the dark and you're just taking a bow and arrow and
Okay.
just shooting.
My question was though, what has caused brands who build connections to do well, and what brands do you think have done poorly at building those connections, and why?
Brands that have done well.
At building the connection specifically, right? Geared around that like
Okay,
connection and relationship building of the
okay.
21st century.
So let's take an old one that's struggling right now,
Okay.
and that's Dell.
Okay. Yeah. Let's do Dell.
Okay, because they were the first ones to offer computers online, and you called them up and you told them what you wanted, and we'll build it any way you want it,
Yep.
and we'll ship it out to you in 2 weeks, and you'll have it.
Yep.
Everybody was thrilled. It was great. It was new. Now Samsung, HP, Lenovo, even
Microsoft themselves.
Microsoft, they all sell direct to the public, even though you can pick up at the local store,
Yep.
and they all will customize whatever it is you buy. Um, so where is the specialness?
Yeah. But yeah, competition came in and kind of took away that unique trait.
Yeah, and that was Dell's selling point. And so now the question is what does Dell offer? What does Dell provide that the others
Mm.
don't in value?
I think that's an interesting point that you just brought up. I don't think you even realized what you just brought up. But what you just brought up actually is really interesting because what you brought up is really the ideology of the difference between branding and being a product. What Dell created was a product, and they created a way that was a superior product, superior way to get the product, et cetera, but it was a product. They never built a brand, which is where you have these raving fans that want to buy specifically from you and only you because of their connection to you as a whole.
Mm-hmm. And they had a level of that. They did build a level of that,
Did
but
they?
but it's
Okay.
but it's but it's diminished over time because they haven't
Well, at least
created
the B2C market.
they haven't found a way to
Yeah.
keep that relationship going.
Yeah. So that's the real question, I guess, then in the 21st century is, are you building a product or are you building a brand? If you're building a product, you're only going to be as successful as long as your product is doing better than everyone else.
Or you're cheaper than everyone, or
Yes.
you're the only one that anybody thinks of. Like if you're Kleenex, it's pretty easy to sell a lot of something.
You're the first, and you branded and held it for a
And
long
right,
time.
and
Yes.
now the name of your company is the brand for whatever that is.
Yeah, that's
Right?
fair.
Okay. But
But
outside of that, it's tough.
but I mean, if someone tomorrow were to build a competitor to Kleenex and they were to hype it up and promote it, they could probably take a pretty good market share, I'll be willing to bet, of Kleenex.
Yeah. Well, Puffs has been trying that for a long time and very unsuccessful. So I'm not sure
Okay.
how that works.
But
But
I'm
I
thinking more of like Pepsi and Coke,
yeah.
right? Where Pepsi came out and did just some great branding and great. I mean, they were behind. I mean, they were so far behind Coke in the '90s.
Mhm.
I mean, ridiculously. I mean, I forget the exact number difference, but I mean, more than double.
Mhm.
Coke compared to Pepsi, and Pepsi really bought into the brand game. Really bought heavily into kind of focusing on how can we build connection with the community? How do we build association with the community? And they went from being this like, yeah, they're another. I mean, it was like Shasta or something,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
yeah, Pepsi's another brand, to actually being a very close competitor to Coke.
Right.
And it purely came down, I mean, to branding. And they even talked about like, I mean, I don't know if you've heard the famous Coke Pepsi taste test, blind taste test, but there's like a literal like. I mean, maybe we should try it one of these days. But it's funny because there's an actual blind taste test study that was done years ago where they basically gave people Coke and Pepsi, and they said which is better, and they'd say Coke, and they blind tested them, both of them, again, and people always chose Pepsi. But if they looked at the can and drank Pepsi, they would not consider it a better drink
Right.
because there was just such an evolution of the mind of the association of Coke and like the appreciation of it compared to Pepsi.
Yeah. That Coke is real cola, and that's what real cola
And the
tastes. And
branding.
Pepsi is just a knockoff.
Well, I think that was the hard thing is that they were playing the knockoff is how everyone viewed Pepsi. So even if it was a superior drink, it was viewed as a knockoff compared to Coke because of the branding and marketing Coke did back in the 70s and 80s,
Yeah.
and I mean back to the 40s even.
Yeah. All the way back to their
I mean,
inception, because that was the one thing
they were a
did
heavy
well is
advertiser in
they
many years.
understood advertising was all that they had to
Yeah.
keep alive.
But I mean I bring that up just because of the fact of I think branding is just that connection point is so important, and that product I think is where a lot of people get stuck because I think a lot of people act like Dell and they're like, oh, we have the best product, oh, we have the best
Right.
feature, we have
Or
the
I get
best
something
whatever.
that nobody else does.
Yeah,
Nobody else has this. Nobody else has figured this out. That's nice.
that doesn't mean no one else will be able to figure out or will come to be a competitor or the markets will change. Yeah.
Well, all I can tell you is look at Chinese robots and look at um, what's the Dynamics, Boston
Oh, Boston
Dynamics.
Dynamics.
Boston Dynamics showed all these robots doing all these different things, and then amazingly, the Chinese made the same robots.
well, quote unquote, it's made the same robots.
Something that looks like the same
It
robot,
looks very
moves
similar.
like the same robot.
Yeah. Well, I say that because the whole chip war with China has got China very struggling right now on the tech space.
Yeah. So there's so there's all that. But I get my point
But yes,
is
competition.
is that everything's fine until everybody wants one, and then everybody can make it.
Yeah.
I promise you, everybody can make it, whatever it is. And it's only your branding that's really going to hold you apart. I mean, that's what kept IBM in the game as long as they were in.
Yeah.
And then what happened with IBM is finally we got to the place where the IBM techs were just too expensive compared to the PC techs to build a system that does the same work. And everybody knew it did the same work. And that's what killed IBM.
So I'm curious real quick on your thought on this with branding, and then we'll kind of leave it at that. But I'm curious your thoughts on this when it comes to branding. There is a quote that Michael Scope used the other day in one of the videos I was watching him, and
Okay.
I thought it was an interesting quote. And so basically, it was something along this lines: innovation times difficulty of use equals true innovation, or as I'm calling it, innovation prime. And the ideology being that, and I asked because you've been in the tech space, and he was referring to the tech space predominantly. The idea being that if you create something new, that's great. But if it's hard to understand or hard to learn to use, that makes it less of an innovation.
Correct.
And the simpler it is to use, the greater an innovation it is, if it's a small adjustment.
Correct.
Um,
That's absolutely correct. Because we had computers and word processors way back when.
yeah,
We had WYSIWYG word processor, which is what Word is.
yeah,
WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. Word processors way back with the PRS model 80. Okay, that's how far back. I
yeah.
mean, back
You'd have to
in the
give
dark
dates
ages.
because I mean,
I'm talking about 1981.
yeah,
Okay,
that's before
1982.
I'm aware of stuff.
Back in the dark ages.
90s I know, 80s
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah, back in the dark ages. But people still weren't using them because not enough of the rest of their life was on a computer. Now, everybody has a phone. Everybody has some sort of interface to a computer. And it's only natural. No, I mean, when I was growing up, when I first got into computers, it's like, but I have a typewriter. I can fill out my forms with my typewriter. How am I going to fill out my form with your computer? Well, there wasn't a way to do that.
Yeah.
Now we have forms you can fill out with your computer.
Yeah.
And we even have web pages now that you can fill out the form with your computer.
Yep.
Right? So it's easy, it's straightforward, it makes perfect sense. But we didn't have that when they first started. And so the barrier to entry was huge.
Right.
It was very hard to get a company on computers, even though they knew there was benefit down the road.
Yeah.
But getting them to make that initial purchase just
Gotcha.
impossible.
Okay. Gotcha. I mean, I think that kind of covers the connection points. The only other thing I'd want to say, so I know I mentioned Pepsi, but I'm curious, can you think of any brands that have done a great job of being associations of groups to make their brand known? Right? So I mentioned Pepsi. Pepsi like did a bunch of concerts that they sponsored,
Mm-hmm.
was their big claim to fame, as well as they have like their Super Bowl halftime, right? That's really huge. Are there any companies that you can think of that have done similar stuff where they've basically made themselves associations of groups that existed, communities that existed through sponsorships, through, giving away product that have really killed it?
I hate to tell you this, but off the top of my head, no.
Okay.
All right. You seem to do a lot better at finding those companies and finding those situations.
Well, I know there's Pepsi, there's Liquid Death. I know
But there's a lot more
there's
than
another
that.
company that I was looking at. I mean, I'll throw this out there just for people to be aware and think about. There's a lady who I heard about in Canada. So I mean, different culture. So I don't know how much like us, but she basically went to this one local business group, meetup group, right? It's on kind of like a chamber of commerce of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
And she offered to basically have her photography booth be there for free.
Okay.
And so for 2 hours, she showed up and she had the photography booth that she ran and, took those photographs. And it's, that booth where it's like, you go on there and you can choose like different like things and
Yeah.
like whatnot. Uh, and she did it for free at the event.
Okay.
From that event, she was able to get like 4 sales, 3 or 4 sales. Then that after from that event specifically, like 3,
Mhm.
4 people hit her up to be at birthday parties or other events.
Mhm.
And so she just kept doing free events for that group. And then that inherently allowed her fame to grow because like everyone in that group knew about her and it was a business group. And they were telling, other organizations and networking events like, hey, you've got to have this person here because like it's just a lot of fun, et cetera, et cetera. And she literally built her entire business out of just building that group and association, adding value to
Mhm.
this one group. And then everyone appreciating and enjoying it so much that they end up,
Yeah.
hiring her to do everything
Yeah.
else.
And that's the power
I
of
mean,
branding advertising.
yeah,
Um, the thing is that you've got to have it be the right thing, the right place, right
right
people,
people. Yep.
and 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 there's a certain element of luck, just like anything else in business.
Well, I think there's a certain element of you try until you know for a lot of people, right? And I think that's the luck part. But yeah, no, I mean that's great. So I mean that's kind of it, I think, for this branding topic. I will say for next week, just so you're kind of prepared. Next week, I do want to talk about market segments,
Oh,
breaking down market segments. How do you break it down? Different market segments, what people need to think about, etc. Because I think that's one of the things I'm seeing that people really struggle with when it comes to their ideal target avatar, right? They're you
but
know
nobody knows what market segments are. Even marketers don't know what market segments
a lot don't. But that's why I want to talk about it because I think it's an incredibly important conversation for
are. It
us to
is.
have.
It is.
An
It's
important one
huge.
for people to think about because you can't do branding without knowing your target avatar. You can't know your target avatar without breaking down market segments and creating your own custom market segments. Like you can't have success.
Well, you can have success, but
All right.
you're taking the shotgun approach, and you're hoping that somewhere out there you'll hit something,
All right. Yes, that's accurate. Yes.
and you're shooting with the blindfold on, so
Yes.
that makes it even harder.
Yes.
As you
Not what
shoot
I would
enough times,
suggest.
eventually something will be wandering in front of you. You will shoot. Fortunately, it may be a person.
Yeah. No, not the approach that I would suggest.
No, no,
So
no.
I think market
So
segments and breaking down kind of what they are, how they are, factors to think about would be
yeah,
really important
yes,
and impactful.
yes. Segments are tough.